going on, everyone? Welcome to episode, what are we on? 77?
Nice.
Yeah, 77. We're getting up there. So,
Yeah.
as you all know, I am not the official host. The official host is currently in Pennsylvania enjoying himself. Shout out to you, Ariel. We will miss you this episode, but I am Junior, aka Clown Prince, joined by Brian, aka Magneto, and Mark, aka Zoom. And we are actually joined by a very, very, very special guest today by the name of Kat Cressida. Kat, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yes.
And I got your memo not to wear anything below waistline here, so out in Sherman Oaks, California.
There you go.
Nice.
Callie, how are things? And so actually, before we even get into any questions, you have to choose. So every guest that comes on has to choose their alter ego, their villain for the episode. So although we kind of already know what you're leaning towards, we're not gonna. Aren't you a villain per se in the haunted mansion? In the parks of Disney?
I guess you could call her that. Is my AC gonna bother you?
No, we
don't hear it.
We don't hear it. That is the lowest AC ever.
Okay. Cool. I don't know if Constance Hatchaway is really considered a villain. I mean, there's millions of fans who write me
okay, maybe I'm
all
stereotyping.
the time saying that she's their hero, which makes me wonder what's going on with them because she's a homicidal maniac. But
so that's what I mean.
But she's not like a villain.
It's not like mustache twirling, world conquering.
The world of the Haunted Mansion to Disney fan. I mean, we're going to get into a conversation here, but to people who are Disney fans. Mm-hmm. There's this balance in the mansion between humorous, goofy, silly, and dark, macabre, Edgar Allan Poe.
Right.
So it never really reaches full on evil, even though in theory, yes. In theory, yes, she's kind of the hero of the mansion in that she's like a liberated woman who just knew what she wanted and went after it.
Okay, so that's why I said I didn't want to assume that was going to be your villain. So,
yeah.
So it's a great point. You see her as the hero in all this. I think that's pretty amazing.
I think I told you when we did like our little preview that who my favorite character of all time had been to voice was Bloody Mary from The Wolf Among Us. That's a villain.
All right. So is that what you're going with for the rest of the match? She's like, no, like I want to choose like somebody else. Like I already voiced her.
Does it have to be someone I voiced, or could
no?
It be
Absolutely.
It could be
anyone you perceive as a villain.
I mean, if I could like blink and be anybody, God. I mean, there's so many great comic villains. There's so many who I just love.
Right.
Too many. You didn't give me enough time to prep for this question.
Okay. It's fine.
we can circle back.
Answer it at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
You can answer it at the end of the episode.
I love all the villains because the great thing about a great villain is they're in the right. From their point of view, from their world point of view, from their experience, they are right. And if you're playing them true, if you're really being a great, authentic, deep villain, your point of view is that everybody else is in the wrong, that you're doing the right thing.
Right.
And I love those villains because they're not at heart thinking that they're destroying, and yet that makes them all the more evil and delicious because they represent pure evil, like Thanos or Zod in the most recent Superman. Those
Man of Steel.
How do you feel about Man of Steel?
They're doing right by their world, and from their point of view, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hero of their own story. Yeah.
So,
it's
absolutely.
It's funny you mention that because it's like my chosen villain name is the Joker, Clown Prince, but it's like I think he is one of those exceptions of a villain where it's like, okay, like he doesn't really think he's right in all this. He knows he's a maniac, and he just goes with it.
Well, and some films, if you're truly demented, then you don't really have a compass one way or the other.
Exactly. He just does what the hell he wants.
And there's been so many different iterations, but I'm here to talk to give you whatever I can about my piece of the world. You guys are the experts on villains, so I feel like I can't really add to that conversation. Right?
No problem.
Even though I voice them for a living.
Right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about sort of your background. I know you just said you're from California. You're born and raised in California?
No, I actually my earliest born and raised. So I was born in LA, but we immediately vacated because my dad was working with Disney and with advertising, and we ended up in Chicago for a heartbeat. Fascinatingly enough, we lived literally a few doors down from Cher and Chastity.
Oh wow,
That's awesome.
That's like hey neighbor, like
She had gotten divorced from Sonny, and for some reason she was in Chicago for a while, maybe just taking a break from Hollywood. But we actually have pictures of me in the sandbox with Chastity. That's crazy.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's insane.
And I'm like literally like 2 years old, like, you know, just sort of kibitzing around in there.
Right.
And then we quickly moved back to LA. But then in my very early formative years, parents split, and most of my family was East Coast. My whole family's from the East Coast, Bronx, Brooklyn, Great Neck. Yeah. Yeah. So, that's right.
Deep into her voice.
She's like, New Yorkers, gosh.
Oh, no, I freaking love them. So spent a lot of my formative years in New York. And every summer, regardless of where I was, I always went to upstate New York for summer camp.
Nice.
For sleepaway camp for 3 months, 2 or 3 months. So I kind of feel like I'm equally at home in both California and New York, and Los Angeles and Manhattan. Right. But I also equally feel somewhat alienated from both because I'm not a full on. There's always a piece of me that's like, I'm not quite. I could spend about a week in New York before I start to get that crazy antsy, oh my God, I missed my car and freeway traffic and my car.
Yeah.
But then as soon as I'm back in LA, like, you know, 2 weeks into it, I'm like, God, I miss the culture in New York. So.
But how often are you going, you know, back and forth though?
Well, these days, not so much.
Not so much. Yeah, today, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
There was a while I was going back and forth 2 or 3 times a year.
Got it.
In my career, because there was a lot of localization, a lot of local gigs in New York. If you wanted to do promo announcing and be the voice of a network like TNT or TBS or HBO, you had to be in New York. Yeah. Now, with the way things have blown open with the world in terms of technology, I can have my full-on home studio and work anywhere.
Yeah, I think now, especially right with this whole thing, everything is through what we're doing right now. Like I can't imagine the dudes at Zoom are like, oh my God, like this is the best thing ever. Because, you know, everything is just being run through this, or how we talked about on Monday, you know, Skype or, you know, Google Hangouts or Google this. So, right. And especially pertaining to your job, like you said, you know, you get a call. It's like, hey, can you do this voiceover? It's like, yeah, no problem. You can just do it from the comfort of your own home.
There's still, if it weren't COVID though, I mean, there's still, every region has its like protective nature. Every region's like, hey, we're Chicagoans, so nobody else, you know, we want local.
Oh, okay.
Protective of their talent, which is good, you know, that they should be. If someone has spent their life building a career in Chicago, it's not fair for necessarily some LA chick to get that gig. But it has shifted so much over the past few years, where more and more and more, you don't necessarily have to be somewhere, but it doesn't hurt. I was looking forward, and I may still be traveling to Chicago. I'm going to probably be on a talk show that is basically based out of there, and it'll be nice because I'll get to meet my agents. Maybe I'll get to meet a few local ad people. Depend on what's going on with the culture. Sadly, I just had a Halloween con. My last con of the year that was still on the books.
Oh, right.
Just canceled out.
They're not doing virtual?
I don't think so, because what was cool about it was like a small town.
Oh, right. It's not one of those.
It literally was like, I loved the idea. It was adorable. It's like this small town that goes all out, and every small town from all over the county. Very like,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And so I was really looking forward to that, because it was going to be like, oh, you know, all the local families, and very, very sweet, very real.
Yeah, right. It's like real down to earth, you know, everyone knows everyone kind of vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. and not that I'm like the biggest deal in the world, but they were like really excited, like, oh, someone, you know, from the LA entertainment industry is going to be here for us all weekend, and we get, you know, nonstop access to her.
Mm-hmm.
But they were in Texas, and truthfully, I was like, even like 2 months ago, I was like, why are we booking airline tickets? Shouldn't we wait and see?
Yeah, right.
And they kept saying, yeah, we're on. We've spoken to the city. We've got all our safety protocols in place. I was like, I'll show up as long as they
As long
want
as they,
me to.
yeah.
But yeah, they literally canceled 2 days ago, and so.
Yeah, but I know it's just a whole new world that we're living in. But I mean, so how did you sort of get involved with voice acting? Like, what was the first thing, or like, what did you want to become as a kid? Like, when you were a kid, what were you like? You know, you were like, oh, I want to do this. Because I know for me, it went through like 15. I went through 15 different phases, right? I did one thing. I used to play soccer. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be a soccer player when I grow up.
So,
No.
and it was interesting. I know you guys have seen my TED Talk. What was really interesting about doing that and putting that whole thing together, because that's a trip and a half on how much prep you have to do for it. But you really, they want a piece of everybody's origin story. They want you to be authentic about where you came from and how your lens is shifted based on your experiences from where you started from. But interestingly for me, I'm exactly, it took me a long time to get there, but I'm exactly where you would have thought I would end up given what kind of a child I was, because I literally popped out of the womb talking. I was like nonstop chattering. Even if I didn't know words, I was nonstop verbal.
Right,
and,
something was just going on always, all times.
And not to entertain the sexual jokes here, but I was always throwing stuff in my mouth. I was rushed to the emergency room so many times. Cigarette butts, sand,
oh my god,
mud,
oh my god,
crayon. Like, I was always just like wanting to like experience things here. I don't know what that was about. I can guarantee you it wasn't sexual. It was more about, because I have vague recollections of playing in the background at the age of 4, playing with mud, and it was fascinating because it looked like chocolate when it was muddied up.
I know where the story's going.
It looked like brownies. You know, it looked like
like,
brownie.
Yeah. Brownie batter, yeah.
You bring it home. It's like, hey, I just brought us some brownie batter. You guys want?
I was like fearless. I was like, brownie mix, and then of course it wasn't. And so I think the joke is that I ended up in the ER probably 13 times before I was 7, because they had to keep getting out whatever I put into my system.
Ouch.
And communication was hugely important to me. So important. I desperately needed and wanted my words to hit the other person and to get a reaction. So I was always talking to, communicating, babbling on. And from the age of 3, this is insane, but from the age of 3, I was reading from those big giant golden books, the story books, Disney. I was reading out loud to my dad.
Wow. So it's like it's like what you said, like you didn't have a linear way of getting to where you are now, and like you went through that roller coaster, but you're at exactly where you should be, which is awesome.
I would be sitting on a little wooden stool. I had like a little play school. I had a little wooden stool, and he'd be shaving, and he'd ask me questions like, "And then what did Jiminy Cricket say?" And I'd be like, "And then Jiminy Cricket." So I was like full on telling these stories at the age of 4. And then what's really funny, we still have one of these signs somewhere around the age of 5, 6, 7 in the little local neighborhood with the little yellow house that we lived in. I was posting signs telling neighbors that it would cost them 10 cents to come see me do Pinocchio.
Oh, okay. She like,
pay up. 6-year-old,
pay up.
6-year-old gets that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that was me. I was running around, and I asked my mom recently, like, did people show up? She's like, yeah, people showed up.
I mean, for 10 cents, like, that's a bargain. Like, yeah.
And my poor brother would get drafted into, playing all the other characters I didn't want to play, and the local neighbor kid. But I was putting on plays I can't imagine they were any good, but we were putting on plays at the age of 5, 6, 7.
But that's, that's incredible because, back to your point where, you said you always wanted to say something and always get a reaction from someone. I think, especially at an early age, that's everyone, right? Like everyone wants to do that. But and how you're saying it, you wanted to put on play, you wanted to do this stuff, like you wanted to be, heard, and you still do. And I think, that's where when some people start growing up, although when they were kids, they were very outgoing and they used to speak a lot, sometimes you see those people kind of close up and be very like to themselves. Always, I still think everyone always wants to be heard, no matter what it is, because we're humans, that's in our nature. But you kind of took that, you ran with it, and that's where you are today because of that, because you continuously wanted to just keep talking and keep being heard.
Keep talking, yeah. And what's interesting, I mean, I did a lot of acting, all the usual things. I went to theater camp, started in the camp play, whatever that was, entered into the talent contest, always doing some performance. But weirdly enough, and my major was Shakespeare, which is all about words and poetry and the beauty of
the theater communication.
Right. Shakespeare is very much about the words and properly landing the right word on the right moment for clear communication, which is why he's lasted for years. But I didn't want to act, which is so contrary to everything that I did. My goal was never to be an on-camera actor or to have my face seen or to be the star. It was more about, I want to communicate. I want to tell stories. I want to share. So I think that is kind of unique.
Yeah, definitely.
Most kids either think they want to star and stuff, or they know that they want to act if they're going that way.
Right.
Or they don't. And I actually, not to pick a fight with you, but I don't think everybody wants to be. I think some people are perfectly content not speaking and not being heard. Maybe deep down they want to be, but there's a lot of people who are very, very comfortable receding into the background and not.
Yeah. That's a good point.
That is a good point. No, that's fine. I'm wrong. You're right, Kat. Okay, like that's all you had to say. It's like you're
that's
wrong.
Great. Now let's talk about Star Tours. No.
She's on a roll.
I mean, before we get too far in, because I don't know your audience, and I want to be there for them and for you guys. Is there a specific role or anything specific that you wanted to talk about that we just get to, so that people aren't like, all right, already about the esoteric?
Well, you did voice the very, very iconic Dee Dee from Dexter's Laboratory, and so here's my thing, because I feel
the antagonistic.
So here's my thing, because I feel like, let's say I go on your website or go on your social media. I feel like, because for me, I'm like, why isn't Dee Dee like the face of everything that you're doing? Because I feel like Dee Dee is one of the most Dexter's Laboratory is one of the most popular shows ever, I would say.
I think it's because it's like that for us.
You think?
In our eyes, when we were kids, But
Kat doesn't like that. You're gonna make her feel old when she's not. We're not. Kat, we mean Kat.
Well, it's not so much that. It's just that I've done a lot since then, and there's some people who would argue that more recent work is their favorite. So that's the cool thing though about what I've done. I seem to fall into very distinct demographics where, like, for example, I'm like the female, one of the lead female voices for ESPN for a lot of their cool, like the biggest sports show in the world. I'm so honored to have been the voice of 15 years, Pardon the Interruption. Now, if you're not into sports, that means nothing.
Well,
and if you're not into the NFL draft, that means nothing. But if you're into that, that's the biggest credit to you. Oh my God, she's the chick who voices the NFL draft. Oh my God, she's the cool voice of PTI. Oh my God, she's the voice of all the draft specials. If you're into video games, depending on which game you're into, that's what matters most. And you could care less about the Disney credits or ESPN. You're like, what? Mm-hmm. So I think that's really cool, is that depending on the podcast, depending on the interview, they'll think that what they love is the only thing we should be talking about. The only thing that I should care about. And they're right from their point of view.
So PTI, I wanted to get into this because I'm a big sports guy. So this was like, see, like I knew about, obviously I watched Texas Laboratory. That was cool. But like when I found out that you were the voice on PTI, I was like, oh crap, that's so cool. So I wanted to ask you about like when you got that job, did you have like any like clue about like maybe what this show, like, how huge this show is, or were you big and okay.
No, the show had already. So the guys, of course, were already huge. Tony and
Mike and
Mike were already huge stars. I mean, they were famous for their Washington Post, for being huge in in the sports world already, and they'd done some episodes. They were already like into a couple of episodes. So I think the show, Eric Rydholm, who's sort of the Steven Spielberg in a way of ESPN. He's created so many of their top hit shows. He's just such a genius in terms of vision of what people want to see. So I call him like the Steven Spielberg of ESPN because he's come up with concepts that nobody had thought of before. And he does it in a way where it's always about what the audience wants and doing it interesting and visually cool.
Okay.
So he's the one who created it. I think he'd already been a part of Around the Horn. So that had already been succeeding for a while. And all I knew was that it was I remember exactly where I was when I was auditioning. All I knew was that it was a new show for ESPN. And the specs were very unusual. The specs were not something I'd ever seen in voiceover before.
What do you mean by specs?
Literally, the description of what the voice was they were looking for the chick who was cool, who sounded like she could hang with the guys, throw back a beer, talk about the game, bang them afterward, and but still remain besties. It was like sort of the perfect.
Yeah, I get it.
Got it.
And that's the vibe that they were looking for. And I read those specs, and I'm like this is a while back. This is I'm pretty young and new to all this. I'm reading these specs going,
excuse me?
How do you convey that in the voice? It's one thing to visualize it and picture it, but what does that mean vocally? And that's what the craft of voiceover is taking some description or some visual and then giving a voice to it that translates emotionally so that it hits you in the gut and the heart, like, yeah, that's what that should sound like.
Right.
And I didn't have a clue because I'm not that chick. Baseball, Dodgers, Yankees. I grew up, both East Coast and West Coast.
Right. So you're both, yeah.
Being a youngster, I was equally happy at either Dodger Stadium or Yankee Stadium. Sorry.
I can imagine. Like
no. Right, we're Yankee fans, so
100%. But back then, just baseball. I loved baseball, and I played Little League. But I didn't know anything about football. That the phone call I got to voice the NFL draft. That's a funny phone call because that's a whole other story. But for pardon the interruption, I just remember getting to the microphone going, what does a girl who knows sports, who hangs with the guys, sounds like she could throw back a few, get on with them afterward and go right back to being a friend sound like? Sort of like the perfect sports chick. So I didn't really know. But fortunately, somewhere in there, they'd also said she's got sass or sarcasm or she's got an edge to her.
Okay.
And fortunately, that's what I grabbed onto.
You leaned into it. Yeah, absolutely.
I knew they didn't want something that sounded really, they didn't want something that sounded like a.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, they didn't want that.
Like, yeah, dude. That. Yeah. It's like.
Yeah. One of the bros.
So I just kind of went with the sass and didn't know what I was talking about. Like, I remember reading some of the description of the show, and I remember originally there was like a short paragraph I had to read that I never ended up doing, but it was like, welcome back to Pardon the Interruption. Now we're throwing down the stats of who's the most likely to, and I didn't know what that was.
Right.
So I just kind of faked my way through it. And then we had a callback. I remember we had a callback with the senior producer, Bonnie Burko. And again, this is 19 years ago, 18 years. It's a long time ago. So maybe it was 2003. Someone else smarter than me knows when the show actually like kicked off. But that was really fortunate to get to do that. And it wasn't until, to answer the question, I guess, more accurately, it wasn't until we were doing it for maybe a year and a half that like I got the memo of what a big deal the show was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
First of all, I'm in LA. Second of all, I'm not into sports. I'm not really paying attention to what's doing. I should have been, but I wasn't. I just knew it was my weekly Billboard show that I would call in and do the ins and outs and the billboards for. And all of a sudden, though, once it became a big deal, then people were like, "Oh my God!" And back then, I think it was an even bigger deal. Like when it really was
taking off. Like
like, you're the chick from. And suddenly we started to see, this is really funny. We started to see specs, descriptions on other auditions at the time, 2005, 2006, 2007. We're looking for we want the voice that sounds like the chick from PTI.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Kat's like,
yeah.
Like,
you think? And that's like
that's
the oldest.
Awesome.
I think Tom Hanks has even made that joke that early on he would audition for things that said, "We're looking for a young Tom Hanks," and be like,
it's like,
yeah, I'm still here.
I'm still here.
So just to answer the question, it came out October 22nd of 2001.
Okay.
Oh wow. Okay.
01. Damn, it's been around for a while. Yeah. But that's incredible. Like you've done so much, and not to go back to Dee Dee, but just because.
But to go back to Dee Dee.
But to go back to Dee Dee, right? It's just like. No, it's just I feel like you. It's not that you have a certain like it feels like you're trying to stray away from her. But like, why is that? Or it's just because like I have new works and you're just more proud of your new works. Like, what is that?
It's because during our last conversation, we had a whole conversation about her already. So I guess I feel like very like talked about that. I'm happy to talk about, well, probably because it's called Chillin With Villains. So I thought we were going to talk more about like the villain stuff, but I'm happy to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about.
Oh, so yeah, that brings us to
or my promos for Stars Outlander. Those are a big deal to people who love Stars.
Oh no, of course. I'm just saying because back to your earlier point where you said, oh, like what is your audience, where do the audience leans towards? And our audience basically like anything. That's the great part about it. We can have a podcast strictly about sports and we know people will tune in. Again, we can have one, getting real psychological, real, deep about things. They'll tune in. And we really appreciate our audience for that. And, especially having great guests like yourself, we love guests that we can engage with. I think that's the thing. It's not what topic it is, as long as the topic that's being discussed is being engaged in the proper way, anything can be enjoyable, Like we could talk about balloons for half an hour and I think we can make it enjoyable. We're not going to. That's not what I'm hinting at. We're not talking about balloons, Kat, all right? But fine, Kat. We'll start talking about what was your breakthrough? What did you feel was your breakthrough moment? Like where you were like, oh, like was it what we just discussed with
like PTI?
PTI, or did you have something prior to that really that you stood out?
Any day now.
Huh?
Any day now.
I'll book my breakthrough role.
What do you mean?
That's how actors always think.
Always do. Yeah.
What's ahead? What else? What can we conquer? Right. That's how we see things. At least I think most voice talent are not really looking backwards so much.
Yep.
But in terms of like, okay, if the question is, like, I've never felt like I've arrived. There's never been a moment where I've gone.
Okay. This is it. Okay. Right.
Yeah. There's been moments that felt like, oh wow, this is what it feels like to be doing something I love. This is what I dreamed of. There's been specific moments doing those things, voicing Bloody Mary was one where I realized, yeah, I'm with the creator, Julian, and we're in this groove, and she's a badass character. I mean, that was cool. Recording The Bride, any Disney fan, anybody who's a Disney fan has heard any one of my millions of podcasts about the Haunted Mansion have heard me talk about those breakthrough moments of the surreal realization that I was now going to be a lead character in a classic Disney attraction that's been around.
Insane.
It's insane. And weirdly enough, I'm the only person alive. I'm the only person alive who's a voice in the classic mansion. Why? Because all of them were recorded in 1967.
Wow.
Whoa.
And The Bride got added in 2006.
So
That's
I
amazing.
think that, like, I understand you want to be humble and you want to keep pushing forward, but I think that's your like
that's a big time thing. I
yeah,
feel
like that's
huge.
that's awesome. But I love that mentality of no, like I can keep
moving
going,
forward.
keep moving, yeah. Because if people, I think a lot of times people kind of just settle, they'll be like, oh, I already did that, so I'm fine with it. So it's good, and we sort of have that same mentality too. It's like just keep like there's always something to improve on, always. I think for everything, and I love to. Before we get into that, since we're on the Disney topic, you had said something off air that Brian and I felt where it was very, even Mark felt very disrespectful.
Even me.
Where you said that the new, yes, we felt disrespected.
He's joking.
That you would say.
Wait, before we go there, I want to give a shout out though to the universe and to you guys, and to just say something really heartfelt that you just said.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's important to just say this out loud at this moment. Given that you guys know what my journey is, and given what I've been lucky enough to survive and recover from, especially when you hit the age of like 45, which I think for most of us, that's sort of, we consider that sort of the midway point, right? Most of us probably are going to make it, we hope, to around 90, 95. If you're seeing the world as I've already done everything I set out to do, or how do I put this? Somehow believing that you've arrived or you've made it where you're trying to get to, I think you're missing out. I don't want to get too like granola here for you guys, but you're missing out on what the point of living is, because it's about arriving, and it's not about succeeding in the traditional sense. It's nice to make a lot of money. It's nice to make money. It's nice to do what you love doing. But there's no one's figured out what a successful life is. But if you ask me, it's going to be someone more like Gandhi. Or
just peace with oneself, right?
Or just someone who's done something truly great with their craft that has blown everything else out of the water and sets new standards. And I don't think I'm anywhere close. Like, that's not even in my universe. So that's not me being humble, I guess, is what I'm wanting to say out loud. That's not false humility or trying to look like I'm that actor who says, oh,
no, of course.
It's really, to be real, we're all lucky to do what we love to do if we're lucky enough to do it, and if we found the courage to do it. And the thing that I think I'm proudest about at this moment, since you guys are real and want to talk about real, and you've got some really deep thinkers, on your feed, which is amazing. I can't say every podcast I'm honored to do, the audience is thinking that way.
Right.
But I just feel lucky to have survived this long and to have gotten back to doing what I love to do after losing it.
Yeah.
So,
and we will, thank you so much, for sharing that bit, but, we will definitely get into it, or to the extent which.
Let's fight about Star Tours. Come on.
Well, we're just waiting. We're waiting.
Well, so yeah, you said that you didn't like the new trilogy, and I took that personally.
No, you didn't hear what I said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I said,
the new one.
I said I think the original Star Tours is the best one. The Disney attraction Star Tours. I said that I think that's the best version.
Oh, I thought we
were
talking about
the
Star
I thought she
Wars.
said. I thought I heard her say the original Star Wars.
Same. That's
so
what I heard.
don't like the new one, like like the new trilogy of Star Wars movies.
Well, I
Triggered.
feel that way too, but that's going to be a generational thing that I don't think anybody's ever going to win because
Okay.
everybody.
Right. We
Makes
talk about that
sense.
all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
time.
Yeah,
It's like
everybody thinks that what they were raised with.
Nostalgia, right?
Well, no, that's not fair.
Well,
That's
not so much nostalgia. Like I
It's
see what
not-
you're saying. Yeah.
It's not
Okay.
nostalgia for me because it's what I grew up with. It's my reality. So I'm
Yeah,
not
Mark.
nostalgic for me with me being going out to a drive-in, putting my hair in a pigtail, wearing a poodle skirt. That's me enacting the nostalgia of my parents.
Right.
But the original Star Wars, the original trilogy, that was Star Wars for me forever. And P.S. for a lot of people, it's all that was around forever until he decided to come back with his clone reboots and the, revisiting everything with the middle trilogy.
So even though you weren't talking about Star Wars, you're
No, I wasn't.
you still don't like the new right?
Right.
I can put on the New York and we can get into the dialect. So I
Oh
can,
wow! No, you know what the crazy part is? You probably can do a better New York accent than we can. Like,
Probably.
and
Most definitely.
Oh, let her do the New York
Well,
accent challenge.
I'm not from New York, so
it's like, hey, I'm walking here. That was pretty good, right? That was all right.
Oh God.
but to your point, I don't think anybody's going to win that.
Right.
They may be wrong, but they're not. And I'm okay knowing that there's a whole generation out there. I mean, I have a social media manager.
Mhm.
He's not half my age, but close to, which is great because he knows he really understands social media, and he's never even seen the original trilogy.
All right, come
I
on,
think that's
dude.
devastating.
That's tragic.
At least it gives you the emotional depth and understanding of what's going on in the current trilogies, right?
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
Who why he's Ben Solo and not Ben Solo, Ben Solo and who all these characters were. But I'm not going to argue with you ever that the technology was better. Although I will say that what was cool about Lucas's original vision, and I went. Did anybody go to film school?
We did not.
No.
Nope.
We love film, but we didn't go to film school.
If you go to any of the film schools, anyone that's really worth going and paying the money to learn film from any of those great schools, one of the important things that's always taught, and this is to me what's important. You guys all got really quiet. Is
well, we're attentively listening.
What's the intent of the story?
Right.
Where do you want it to land emotionally with your audience, and what are you trying to further their lives with? And the arrogance of filmmaking is that you hope that you're going to take your audience on a ride where they are a little bit better off at the end of it than they were going into it. They've learned something, they've taken some experience away, they've gained something. That's the arrogance of filmmaking, which is a good one. Because why else would you sit there for 2.5 hours if you're not going to leave a little bit better, right?
Mm-hmm.
We probably all walked out of movies thinking, well, I'd like that 2.5 hours back, please. Thank you very much.
Yes, there's a couple of those.
Couple.
Few of those. But the great thing about Star Wars was that early on, Lucas knew that what he wanted was not to create some bright, new, shiny, plastic version of the future that didn't feel real. He knew he wanted his future to feel lived in, real, authentic, that you felt like you knew it. You somehow could relate to it because there were going to be touchstones in the movie that felt in your gut like you got it. Mm-hmm. And that's any great movie does that, where it, even though it's taking you somewhere new, somewhere inside of you go, yeah, I know that guy, or I feel that, or I'm excited about that. It's what gets you passionate about it. Yeah. And he was brilliant in that he made a future, and anybody who's, I'm not saying anything to your Star Wars fans who aren't rolling their eyes going, yeah, Kat, we know. But he made a future that felt lived in.
Yeah.
Everything looked like it had already been used. Nothing was bright, shiny, new, except for maybe the evil empire, because they were fairly new. So they were bright and shiny with their new toys and everything. but everybody else looked like they'd worn what they were wearing for a while, lived in that area.
Raggedy, yeah.
Aged,
Yeah. And that, what was so great about that, again, we're talking, and this is a 1970s audience initially, is that we'd never seen that before. All we'd seen was these utopian futures that were like Buck Rogers, shiny.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that is a good point. I never thought of it like that.
Right.
And that was the universe he created. And the myth, of course, again, I don't mean to be sounding like I know all about Star Wars, but being lucky enough to have been born in that culture, and I did the trading cards and all of that back when it was that it was the King Arthur. It was really just the King Arthur myth repackaged as a space odyssey.
Right.
So of course, Obi-Wan was Merlin, and
Yep.
Luke Skywalker is, I almost said the Mark Hamill characters, if I don't. Luke Skywalker is young Arthur. So all of these mythologies, it was so cool to see them relived, reprogrammed, rebooted in the future. And I think the mistake that
it's like I didn't say it, but I'm saying it.
I'm saying it, but it's my opinion. It's just my opinion.
Of course.
It's right. But my feeling is that when he went back, no, I mean that.
No. Sorry, go ahead.
Is that unfortunately when he decided to revisit it in 2000, what was it?
Like the prequels, right?
Yeah.
The prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Come
Then
on.
he revisited, threw out all of that, and suddenly everything was higher tech and weirdly disconnected from any mythology. There was some soap opera drama going on and some origin story backstories, but he threw out the whole original intent.
Right.
I loved The Force Awakens because it really was just a reboot of the first.
That's what a lot of people say, yeah, like the original, yeah.
Almost, and he admits that. He admits almost beat by beat, he was rebooting what had already been done successfully as a way.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, I think it was a wise decision. Like, how do we not completely alienate millions of Star Wars fans,
but also put these other new people onto it?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, fold them into the mix.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I can really say about it, because I'm not a full-on Star Wars fan like the way billions of other people are. I will take you any day on Disney history. You will never.
You got me on that.
Well, like,
I can't begin to touch Star Wars or Star Trek the way those, any of you people.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Your Disney history, and so it's kind of, and you voice Disney characters and things like that. But it's like, I was gonna ask. It's like you kind of just answered it, where it's like, yeah, like Star Wars is cool, I guess, but it's like I'm not like, even though I'm a part of the whole, Disneyland, everything like that, I'm still not, not sold on Star Wars 100%. Are you like that with, like, let's say Marvel as well? Like Marvel Studios and what they've done with like their film saga, or like, how do you feel about like all that? And even like DC, because I know right now you're voicing, for like that Gotham. It's not a spinoff, right? It's more of just like, segments of like shorts.
Oh, no, that was the thing you saw that where you guys found me. That was from the past. That was something that was really cool that was done to promote Gotham.
Yeah, when it was airing, yeah.
Yeah, and that was a real honor to be a part of. I was the only person who wasn't part of the on-camera cast, so that was really cool to do. But for DC right now, I'm doing Doom Patrol.
Right. You did you two bums still haven't watched season 2, but you're in like 2 episodes in season 2, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, she's
almost there. Starting it tomorrow.
She's one of Dorothy's like imaginary friends. Yeah.
Oh,
Are you, or did you just do the voice, or that's your physical body?
No, I just did the voice.
Awesome.
Okay, cool.
Mark, go ahead. We always lead off with you.
Well, she was in the middle of saying the Disney, how she doesn't really do that many voiceovers. Or did you finish that answer?
I think we finished that up.
Okay.
But I don't do voice.
No, like the Disney.
She's like, dude, that's what I do. What do you mean?
Like, because we were talking about, like Doom Patrol and how like, or that's what you mainly do now.
She doesn't do acting.
Acting, right?
She does voice acting on camera, Mark.
Acting. Sorry, I missed
Slap you. Voice acting is acting.
No, it is.
Don't ever say that.
I'm sorry. That is so disrespectful to me. I am so sorry.
Oh God.
What it is? That is disrespectful. That's not what I meant. I meant on screen acting.
Come on, Junior.
Excuse me.
When people say that, they'll say, "So do you act anymore, or you just do voiceover?"
Right?
Oh.
Yeah. I know. Kat's like, like what do you mean? Please rephrase your question. Like, Usa, yeah.
But
depending on the vibe, I'll either say back what I just said to you, which was, you try getting in front of a microphone and bringing a character to life. You see if that isn't acting. But if if they mean well, then I'll say I don't do on camera anymore. Right. But I definitely am doing acting every day.
So are you saying I didn't mean well? That's what you're saying. You're like, I'll either respond the way I did to you, or if they meant well, this is how I respond.
We're having fun kibitzing on a podcast. So
no, we are. No, absolutely. I'm just gonna head out now because you guys killed my vibe. No, absolutely. And kind of bouncing off that, the whole voice acting thing. You do you teach as well, right? With the voice acting. Yeah, I remember you told us a story like on Monday, and coach. Excuse me, I'm getting all the terminology like incorrect.
No. Well, so the difference is coaching is when someone's already doing it, or you're sort of helping them like land an audition or something, directing them. We more call it like voice directing,
rather than like a classroom full of students.
Class.
Right.
Yeah, I did a lot of that, and honestly, I'll be very transparent. There was a while there during my Rogue. There's like a whole other chapter to my life, which we should get into because you guys are like you guys would dig it.
Let's do it.
For a minute, I actually segued into, while I was still doing full-time voiceover, I think I hit a plateau of like, and before I got sick and before that whole journey. So in 2009, 2010, I was like, what else is out there? Like, I've been doing this for a while. I've been doing this since like 1998. What else could I explore? And I'd been an agent. My first gig in Hollywood had been working at the William Morris agency, representing, now it's WME, because William Morris and Endeavor merged, and now they're like one of the superpower big three. But I started out representing writers, which taught me a great deal of respect, again, for words and communication. And that was like a whole other, that was like pre-25. And then I hit 25 and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be a shark for the rest of my life. What am I going to do? Oh, I should go back to acting because that's what I always thought I was going to do. And I've been doing that for about 10 years. And then I kind of got that, let's see, God, what else could I be doing? And weirdly enough, this is going to rock your world. I ended up managing, wait for it. I ended up managing celebrity hip hop dancers.
Nice.
Nice.
Look at this face. Look at this.
Hey, what do you mean?
Somebody who should be managing. And like, I didn't know. We're going to beat me out? You
yes.
promise.
I promise. We'll beat you out.
I didn't know from Shinola about hip hop music, about hip hop dancing. I didn't know anything about pop. I didn't know.
So how did that go? It's like, okay, so do what you want.
I just thought this would entertain. Like, I don't talk about this ever on podcasts. So here's something that hasn't ever been covered on a Disney podcast. That Kat
Boom! Take that, Disney. Take that.
Well, yeah.
I mean, actually, never mind, Disney.
And these guys were like, I mean, they were like legit. They were the lead dancers for Usher, Timberlake, MJ, Bruno Mars.
So how did you get this gig?
How does it?
It was a weird intersection where basically, so I was at William Morris, and I get called by one of the agents. Hey, we need you to coach. We got a client who's a big director, and he's going to be directing his first movie. And he's got some people in mind that he wants to audition to be the lead in this movie. but they're not actors, they're dancers.
Okay.
And in my mind, this is how far away from like the hip hop dance world. I wasn't even thinking hip hop. I was thinking Broadway dancers. Like that's what I thought they meant, was like they're Broadway dancers. Anyway, it started out basically like, will you meet with them? Will you talk with them? Will you coach them for a couple of sessions to learn how to read a script, how to audition?
Right.
And it was a favor to the client, who was a big director. Turns out who that person was. Now, anybody in the dance world will know this name, Wade Robeson.
Wade Robeson.
You Google him, you'll see. He was.
Mark, are you familiar?
He was the choreographer for a lot of Michael Jackson's work, along with some others.
Wow.
He was Michael Jackson's protege, and then he was Timberlake's choreographer, NSYNC, Britney Spears, that whole heyday of pop.
The 20s. I mean the 20s. The 2000s.
No, 2000s.
The 20s.
What?
The roaring 20s. I don't know. I think I had one too many.
Yeah. Sort of that. That's who Wade was, and he was Michael Jackson's protege. Anyway, he was going to be directing one of the Step Up movies, and I ended up basically in this weird situation of meeting with some of those early, some of the people who were being considered to be leads in the next Step Up movie, because they were great, famous hip hop dancers, but they weren't actors. So that's kind of where it started, and then it kind of evolved. And let's just say I went down a rabbit hole I never should have gone down. I learned more than someone who doesn't belong in the hip hop dance world should ever know about that world, and a lot of it will go with me to my grave. But I will say that it was a magic carpet ride and a crazy drop down the rabbit hole both at the same time. It was amazing to be in the middle of that kind of talent and that kind of energy and that world.
But you're just like,
right. Some of it was not good. Yeah.
But and I learned the choreography for Smooth Criminal.
Oh, nice!
Wow.
Do you still know it till this day?
We're not going to ask you to do it now. Don't worry.
You don't have to do it. But.
Some pieces, but more importantly, I think where I was going with all of this is that it's interesting. Some of the things you learn and the point of views you learn, and they were all, of course, in their early 20s.
Right.
So I was learning a whole different side of the entertainment world, this unique bubble.
That's awesome. You're just like, I can, hip hop, dance it, I can do it. Yeah, whatever, I'll do it. And Smooth Criminal, I know it. I like some parts, not all of it, but it's there. So
it's awesome.
It's diverse, but we're glad that you found voice acting, and that's that. You don't have to experience the hip hop dancing world anymore. So
coaching, somewhere around there in 2009, 2010, I'd realized that I wasn't necessarily looking to teach voiceover. I kind of hit a wall where I was like, oh, what else do I want to be doing? And that's when I kind of dropped the teaching of classes. Mm. But as you guys know from the Jack Sparrow story, I still have to send you that incredible file of the sound alike. But on one-offs, I enjoy coaching people, getting them, helping them nail the job, book the job.
Yeah, that's incredible. And the fact that you have, so Brian and Mark, when Ariel and I spoke with her on Monday, like she told this incredible story of, how she found this guy's voice where she can, you explain it, because I don't want to butcher your story, but yeah, go ahead. I know it's repetitive, but in a nutshell.
I can't share that story. Remember, I told you I can't.
Oh, that's right. Never mind. So I won't tell you guys ever. It's a secret. So
I had something to do with helping the person who took on a major voice double. That's what's called voice double, voice match.
Got it.
So all right, just hush, okay?
Just go off air for a little bit.
We'll talk about it after. But can you tell us, or not tell us? Can you do some of the, if that's okay with you, some of the voice doubles that you've done? Because we know some of them, so we like. I want to.
No,
I don't want to put you on the spot. If you want to do it, you could do it.
I will say you can go to my video page, katcressida.com/videos, and a bunch of them
They're
are
all there. Yeah.
But unlike a lot of voiceover talent, we're not some of us are not hams. We're not like, turn it on.
Right. Like,
Not
oh,
like-
do the voice. Do the voice.
Yeah, like Robin
Yeah.
is a perfect example. And there's some voice talent who are just so brilliant. Their minds just go snap, 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 and they jump in and out. I'm more like, put me in my booth, get me behind my glass, put my on me, and then
you got to be in your element. You got to be like, hey,
Absolutely.
like, do you get that a lot though? Often people, you know, oh, can you? Oh wow, I'm on that list now. What else? I'm on that list now. I'm on that.
Speaking of like other
Good job,
voice
Bridget.
actors, though, like I was wondering, like if there's any voice actors that are like, that you think like you look up to in a sense, you know, or that are like inspirations for you.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many that are so. I mean, and that's the thing is that I'm auditioning every day against, you know, people who I really are so amazing.
Right.
And there's people who've been doing it, you know, longer than I have, that are true veterans, that know much more than I do. There's people who are newer and they just come with this incredible, awesome, fresh, genius energy. I'm weird in that, again, I trained my whole life to do acting, and then I chickened out of it. Then I literally, upon graduation and upon getting accepted into different acting conservatories, literally said, oh, I can't do this for a living. And, you know, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not whatever enough. Voices in my head, parents' voices in my head, whatever. I ended up going into the other side of the business, becoming an agent. Then I did production coordination and production, literally being the person on the set who helped coordinate all the production elements. And then for a minute experimented with managing writers, managed some composers, and then at the same time went into on-camera acting. At 25, I made the decision. It seemed like I was so old at that point. I was like, oh my God, I'm already 25. But I basically said, well, I'm already 25 and I've trained to be an actor my whole life. I got to give it a shot, right? If I don't, I'll feel like I chickened out my whole life. Mm-hmm. So I kind of dove in, and that's late. That was late. Like back when the 90s, when I dove into it, that was kind of late for a female to decide to go into on camera, because I've already passed the young, hot babe stage. And I wasn't a supermodel to begin with. I was like the girl next door look. So fortunately, Friends had just started. It was just on. And thankfully, for the first time in history, females could be a lead in something and not be drop dead gorgeous to start with. Mm-hmm. So I got very lucky, and I booked a ton. I mean, I booked a Folgers commercial, the lead in a Folgers commercial, literally within 2 weeks of getting an agent, which doesn't happen.
Yeah, right.
Every day.
It's tough.
And it was one of those Folgers commercials that like ran forever. Part of that big campaign, the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup, back in the day when those were like they were coming out with a new one of those like every few months. Mm-hmm. And then I booked a whole bunch of sitcoms, like guest stars on sitcoms and 1 hours and, you know, Diagnosis Murder and Friends and Caroline in the City. And I was really lucky that I got to do a whole bunch of those within those 3 years that I was doing on camera. And then I booked a role on ER, which was a big show at the time, ER. And literally while I was in my honey wagon for that, realized that I didn't love this as much as I loved theater acting, which is much more organic and in the moment. But I knew I was way too old at that point to go move to Broadway and try to get a career, you know, doing live. So I kind of was in this weird twilight zone. And luckily there was a celebrity that I was acting opposite on a sitcom. I was playing his inappropriately too young fiance. And he was a really famous celebrity. And he suggested to me, I said that as if there's not famous celebrities, but there's some celebrities that I've never heard of, right? They're celebrities, but I'm like, who's that?
So you can't name drop?
It's not that. It's just for the purpose of the story, let's just say I was very lucky.
Got it.
To be with him in that moment, and he shared with me that maybe I should try voiceover if I really loved communication and Shakespeare and words. Mm-hmm. And I was so ignorant This is 1997, six or seven. I was so ignorant about voiceover that I literally said, "Isn't that for actors who could never make it?"
Ooh.
Wow.
Wow. How dare you?
And for you to criticize
Oh,
I corrected you.
Yeah, you're right.
But actually, no, because back in the day, we're talking like, I mean, I don't know how old you were, Pipsqueak, in 1996. I don't know how old you were, but voiceover was not known the way it's known now. Now you see B-roll. Now you see B-roll of Tom Holland and, Chris Pratt goofing off, voicing for a Pixar movie, right? Back then, nobody knew what voiceover was.
That's
And
so
it was
true.
It was a very small, dedicated group of talent, and that's all they did. I mean, some of them did some on camera, but it was not known. It was a real crap back in like the Scooby-Doo days, right? I mean, back in the Hanna-Barbera days, it was a group of talent, and that's what they did was voiceover, and it was far more difficult to sort of figure it all out because it was such an isolated, distinct group.
Right.
So I didn't really know what it was, and it was a very ignorant statement. And he very nicely corrected me and said, "Well, you may want to explore what it is first before you make that decision."
And now look at you.
But the minute I got behind the microphone, I was like that. It was that moment. It was that life-changing moment. Oh my God! I've been mouthing off my whole life, and now there's a microphone, and I can just speak.
Yeah.
And not worry about what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's its own trade, right? Because not everyone, like, people could be talented on screen and then get behind a mic, there's no cameras, and they don't really know what to do. They're like, some
we were
people
talking about that, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about that celebrity where he's brilliant, but you take the camera away and suddenly his reason for being is gone because there's no camera. So therefore he loses his energy. And they're not all like that. Obviously, Tom Hanks is a total G. There's a lot.
Yeah, Woody, come on.
That's right. And Robin Williams.
Yep.
Wow,
didn't skip a beat. Obviously, going from on camera to voiceover. So it just depends on the talent. But I was not good when I started. I can tell you, I was not a natural at the microphone. It took a lot of training to get anywhere close. And unfortunately, when I booked Dexter's Laboratory, I make the joke that it was like the best possible way to start and the worst possible way to start, because I was in the room live, literally surrounded by the legends of voiceover. They still are the best of the best. In no particular order, so I don't, Rob Paulson, Jeff Bennett, Frank Welker, Chris Kavanaugh, Kat Cressida, Tom Kenny was our swing voice. He just won the Emmy.
Yeah. They were all in. They were all in the room.
And he was like our utility voice, where he was doing all the ancillary characters. But I was with the rock stars of voiceover, and I had just started, and I didn't know anything.
It's like, hi, my name is Kat. Like, it's just like.
And unfortunately, I was so nervous that I did that stupid false bravado of, I'm not going to talk to anybody and I'm just going to focus on what I'm doing because I'm so scared of screwing up. And Dee Dee started out initially as a voice match, because the very first few episodes had already been done. The pilot and the first few episodes of the first season had already been done. Mm-hmm. And the girl who was doing it, literally, Dexter's Laboratory, this is, anybody who's an animation fiend will know this, it started out as the thesis project for a CalArts senior thesis project.
Wow.
For Gendy Tartakovsky, who's amazing. Obviously, gone on to a huge career, including Clone Wars and 30 million other things. And it was his thesis project for CalArts.
Wow. And it became its own, like, big thing.
right at the beginning of
nuts.
cartoon block for Hanna-Barbera for the new Cartoon Network. So I think they've done Cow and Chicken and Ed, Ed and Eddie. I think we're the
that's another one.
Classic 90s. But so Dexter's Laboratory was being introduced, and they weren't. It was like the first 6 shows had been picked up, and the girl who was doing Dee Dee decided she didn't want to be doing voiceover for a career. She wanted to be doing Broadway, so she left.
And you're like, thank you.
Well,
come in, Kat.
Literally, all I knew was that my agent handed me. Here we go. I'm going to date myself. I look good though, right? When I say this, I look good.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
She handed me a cassette tape and said, "See if you can match this voice."
I know what a cassette tape is.
I'm just saying. That's what we used back in the day. She was like,
I know, that's crazy, right?
I went into my car, I popped in the cassette tape, and I hear this crazy, ditzy, Alice in Wonderland-y kind of a voice. And I went back up and I said, I think I can do it. And I laid down the audition. And then like a week later, I get a call back.
Wow.
And it was to voice match that voice, which sounds different. And that's what it started out. And then I didn't even really book it. Then it was like, okay, anybody a fan of The Princess Bride?
I know of it. I know of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, there's a running joke with the Dread Pirate Roberts where he says, "You're doing great, kid. Keep up the good work. I'll most likely kill you tomorrow, but have a good night."
Okay.
Like every night he was like on parole. Like he's managed to survive the pirate ship one more night. Every episode that we did, it was like, well, you still haven't booked it. We're still seeing if you're right for the role. So I didn't even know for the first several episodes if I would still be doing it. And so I was always auditioning.
Right.
And Gendy had, because he's such a comedic genius, he had started to evolve the show in his own head. So he was taking Dee Dee to a different place than where I had started. And it took about 5 or 6 shows for us to find that new, what's become sort of like, I guess you would call it the what people know as the classic voice of Dee Dee. It took a while to kind of like find that groove.
Right.
And, but even still, when you're surrounded by, I mean, this is not exaggerating. If you were to book a gig and there's Julia Roberts and there's Tom Cruise and there's Tom Hanks and there's Julianne Moore and there's Meryl Streep.
That is unfair. That is unfair.
Yeah, no pressure.
It's your first real job. So to say I was a nervous wreck would be putting it mildly. And it took a while for me to even feel at all like I knew what I was doing at the microphone. And Chris Kavanaugh, God rest her soul, she's no longer with us. She was already huge. I mean, she'd already done Babe and Rugrats and
Rugrats. My God.
She's huge. And she was so nice to me. She was so kind. She always explained things if I was given a direction and I didn't know what that meant. She would kind of tell me, this is what you want to do.
Right.
And
that's great.
Went out for coffees and talked about, made pasta together, and she told me a lot about voiceover.
Pasta. There you go. I can get behind that. But okay, Kat. So we're gonna take a quick commercial break, and when we get back, we want you to, we're gonna get very, very deep conversation, and that will be our conclusion.
Maybe we'll do some fun before we get into deep, but okay.
Sure. All right.
All right.
So let's leave again and come back in. I'm getting used to it.
So can I ask you guys before you leave?
Of course. All right, and we're back. So Kat, earlier today you told us that you know more than anyone about Disney history. So prove it. We want you to prove it. Like what about the Disney history? Like inform us. I want to be informed right now.
Well, there's no way. It would take us about
I want from day one. Day one until today.
So what I mean by that, so a couple of things. One is my dad actually worked with and interacted with some of the original Imagineers. which, as we've already discussed, are the people who actually worked with Walt to create Disneyland. Before there ever was a theme park, and before there was a park, and before there was a Disney World, and before there was a million other things that are the Disney franchise and the Disney brand, there was Disney Studios, and then, of course, in 1955, he opened up the park. And because I grew up from a very early, an unusually early age, understanding what the backside of the park was, what went into the technology of audio animatronics, which are the robots that you see in the attraction, how it all came together, what made Disneyland so unique, and what continues to make it very unique from most theme parks is that Walt wanted a 360 experience. Before there ever was a virtual reality, he wanted, when you stepped into Disneyland, to disappear into that era, so that literally the smells, the sounds, the pavement under your feet, the whatever you were walking on, all informed you feeling like you were in that era, whatever that was, and that the world would disappear. And there's a famous plaque, you know, when you go through the tunnels at Disneyland and you've gone through the main gate, that says, "Here you leave the land, you know, here you leave today and enter the world of the past, fantasy, and the future." So that's what Disneyland was and still is for the most part. And
100%. It definitely still is. I haven't been in a couple of years, but yeah.
Yeah, because I was 2 or 3 or 4 years old learning this. From a very early age, I had a deep appreciation and respect for all the elements that went into creating an entertainment. And I understood that it was the smallest details. Walt was all about the details. If you got the details right, the bigger picture would come together beautifully. And if you
100%.
were sloppy and you just threw together the details, it didn't have the same immersive experience.
Because everyone has a bigger picture, a bigger idea, but that's cool and all. But if you don't have the things to structure it, to build it up, you won't get there. Yeah.
And he was a storyteller first. He started out, of course, you know, doing animation and then live action. So to Walt, the story was all important. And if you had a great story, you could build upon it. And it was the greatest attractions that are out there are a story, just like a great film. You start one place and you end up somewhere else, and it's told you a story. And you've participated in that story. You feel like you're a part of it and not just looking at it.
Right.
So, and that's the difference between a thrill ride in a lot of ways and a Disney attraction, is that, you know, you get on a great roller coaster, you have fun for 3.5 minutes, but it's not a story. You haven't gone through a story. You haven't gone through an experience other than maybe getting nauseous.
I like roller coasters. They're fun.
Yeah, no, they are. They're fun. I'm not saying that they're not fantastic. They're amazing, but they're an adrenaline rush, and they're not engaging the intellect or the imagination the way that a Disney attraction ideally does. Anyway, by the way, a shout out to my friend Seth Porges, who is a very famous Forbes writer who covers the Disney parks. He just released on HBO Action Park documentary.
Oh, we saw that. Yes,
on your story.
HBO Max.
So
service.
Incredible documentary on the craziest
thrill
park ever.
It will be streaming August 27th only on HBO Max. So
check that out.
Check that out.
I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Seth did an article on me in Forbes about voice matching, celebrity voice matching. So you can Google that and see all about what it is to be a celebrity voice double.
100%.
Sweet.
Yeah. So
anyway, because that was sort of my compass.
Right.
From an early age, I knew I wanted to be a part of the Disney parks. I knew I wanted to work in the Disney parks. And even going through college, one of my jobs was transcribing interviews with some of the original animators and Imagineers who worked with Walt. So I got to literally on cassette tape. Transcribing is when you type out, you know, a recording. So I was literally typing out all
That's so
of the...
How tedious was that?
Oh, I loved it.
Really? Good for you. I would have been like, oh my God, like I don't even know what he said. That's what happened to me.
If you're a really good typist, you're just listening. So you're just enjoying and your fingers are just going. So I would hear these amazing details about how something was created that's become legendary to all of us that we take for granted. And I'm hearing about how it actually got put together.
Oh, that's cool.
True.
That's
If it's something compelling, right? You're
like,
like,
the subject matter. Yeah.
You're like,
oh my
God. Right.
I mean, these were the guys in the room figuring out how they were going to make the Matterhorn happen, the first 360 roller coaster in the world, how they were going to build Space Mountain, how they were going to build.
Right. So, in a sense, did you feel like you were in the room, like, of them actually talk? Right. But okay.
You're a fly on the wall hearing
Yeah.
these interviews with these legends, and you knew that they'd been a part of history that nobody else was ever going to be a part of. And if you're a Disney fanatic, which I already was, and a Disney addict, how amazing to hear these stories from these legends, these Disney legends, and these original animators who created Peter Pan and Snow White and Cinderella and
super iconic characters. Just incredibly iconic.
So that's where I started from, and then had a throwdown knockout fight with my mom in college because I wanted to go be a cast member. That's what you call someone who works at Disneyland, a cast member. And she was like, over my dead body, are you driving from LA every day on the 5 freeway to go work at Disneyland? And I was like, fine, I'm doing it.
Wow, there you go.
Got my crappy little stick shift, bought a crappy little Nissan stick shift.
There you go. Your mom was like, I'm not paying for your gas either. So how about that?
Great. I rebelled. But it was the most glorious summer. I had the most amazing summer working as a cast member. It was like summer camp times 80. It was like Meatballs, movie Meatballs. It was so amazing. Like
right.
Young, you're working in Disneyland. Everyone is cute.
Damn, I feel like working at Disneyland. Like, just quit everything. I'm working at Disneyland right now.
Yeah. I mean, and you're
the Disneyland podcast coming soon.
But it's just that energy, right? It's that energy that it brings that compels you in it, even when you're working. Even it's just like I'm having fun at work.
You're part of the show, and they take it back then. I mean, it's changed a little bit. It's definitely a different culture now, but they took it so seriously in terms of being part of the show. And I was working in attraction, Storybook Land, where I had a microphone, and I'm literally like talking on the little canal boats, pointing out all the little attractions. We were sort of the sister attraction of the Jungle Cruise, right? The Jungle Cruise, they got to be cool and macho and shoot hippos on a microphone. We got to be on a microphone telling fairy tales. But I loved it. And let's just say that that's been my compass ever since. It's why I went into voiceover, was all the brilliant voices that you heard on Disney attractions and Disney animation was what inspired me to go into voiceover ultimately, and inspired my love of acting and storytelling. So to fast forward, because I learned the Disney Imagineering culture from an early age, learned to respect it, and because of transcribing all those interviews, and because it's my reason for doing what I do and loving what I do, on my social media, every morning I drop what I call the spoonful of sugar for the day. I drop some amazing piece of Disney history, something incredible that you should know about, some attraction that Walt created that no longer exists, or some early version of an attraction, or some behind-the-scenes peek at how they put something together. Because to me, it's so important that current generations and future generations, that there's a connection back to where it all came from.
And it's just never ending, right? Like there's a new story. There's always a story to be told.
Yeah. And you learn I mean, can you imagine having been on the set of the first Star Wars?
Oh.
Be able to actually listen to those first conversations about what is the Empire?
Yeah.
What's a Jedi? Mark Hamill, there's an amazing piece of footage of the first, it's not Star Wars Con because Star Wars hadn't come out yet, but 1976, before Star Wars came out, Mark Hamill and the art director and one of the producers were on a panel at some sci-fi convention, and they were reamed by the press.
Wow.
That was basically saying, so what's this going to be? what's a Jedi? What's a droid? Like, literally, what's a droid?
Wow.
And Mark Hamill does a beautiful job of explaining from his young point of view how amazing this story was, because it combines old mythology with the future. And in a sense, with the Disney history, that's kind of what I'm doing, is inviting you in to see how these amazing attractions were created, or to relive, someone used the word, Junior said nostalgia, to nostalgically connect to something from your childhood.
That was me.
Oh, it's good.
Wasn't me.
Something that we all could use, that, right? Some connection to our childhood that reminds us why we love what we love.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And you mentioned Mark Hamill, so I have to, I just got to ask, I know that you worked with him on Batman.
No, Master of Orion.
On what?
Master of Orion.
Master of Orion. Okay. Is there anything cool, because I don't know, because he's a huge he's the voice of the Joker in the Batman animated series, and he's just gone on to just kind of take that to new heights, and everybody loves him as the Joker. And is there anything you kind of grasped from him, working with him, or did he give you any advice or any cool stories with him or anything like that?
Well, so I'm a lead character in Master of Orion, along with him and other there's a lot of big sci-fi actors. I'm actually the pisher in the group. I'm the only female, and I'm the only non-famous sci-fi legend.
Oh, wow.
They got some really big names in that, along with Mark Hamill. So I didn't have the honor of working directly with him on that. But earlier in my career, let's say I want to say in 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, right around there, I would end up in the same room with him, because I would either be going in for a callback for something, and he was leaving a recording session for something. Because sometimes they would book the studios back to back, where they'd be recording him, and then I'd be going in to do a callback for an audition. And this is so Star Wars, A New Hope, what we call New Hope now. To me, it's always Star Wars, but yeah. The
That's
original
funny, right?
trilogy was at that time the only Star Wars movies that existed.
Yeah.
So to me, he was huge, still, always, and amazing. And I knew that he'd gone into voiceover. And to me, what was the big lesson was how astonishing that you could, like what we were talking about before, where the road doesn't end. You haven't hit it was amazing to me that he was God in terms of the, Star Wars universe, along with other gods. And yet here he was doing voiceover and doing the Joker and doing other famous characters in voiceover. I loved that. It was such an early lesson in, you don't just get somewhere and hang up your hat and go, there, I've done it. Because he could.
Yeah.
No question.
Absolutely. He's like, I'm Luke Skywalker. I can rest easy.
Boom.
Yeah, exactly. But no, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna take another iconic character, and the Joker is super, super iconic, and even him and Kevin Conroy, people know Kevin Conroy because of his voice as the Batman. Everyone knows, it's incredible to see that, and it goes to your point too, where I haven't really seen Kevin Conroy do anything really live action either. He's more just behind the camera on a microphone, which is I find interesting. But then Mark, on the other hand, is he has the ability to. It's not that he has the ability, because I'm sure a lot of voice actors also have the ability to be on screen. They just don't want to or feel like it. But
a lot of them do both. But to your point, so I ended up doing a couple of ancillary characters. That's the term for support characters, on a couple of things that he was a lead on. And I feel like there's only once early on where I was at a microphone and he was at a microphone at the same time, in the same room. But I was mostly just starstruck around him. I didn't really have the courage at that point to start asking him a bunch of questions that I wish I'd asked him. But I do remember asking him at one point what it was like to be him, basically, what it was like to be that famous and what it was like to be Luke Skywalker. And he's so self-deprecating and so kind and so, human, that he had just said something like, I don't know, it's surreal to me. Like, I'm just me.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was being kind because, of course, you probably could answer that. Only a select handful of actors in the world know what it's like to be a living legend on a character that's so unbelievably
like a timeless character like that. Those are like Luke Skywalker's a character that will never ever ever not be mentioned in like on planet Earth. It's just
Right.
And there's I mean it was a cool answer. I don't think I got my answer because what I wanted to I wanted to hear some version of maybe I wanted to hear him say something like, it's kind of amazing and sometimes I can't even, it's hard to fathom, but it's a joyride and it's a surf ride that, sometimes. But I think to his credit and why he's such a great voice actor as well as, a versatile on-camera talent as well, is that he doesn't take it so seriously and he knows that he kind of won the jackpot, and in that early Star Wars panel, I think he even alludes to the fact that he wasn't the first choice initially. There was another actor who was really famous for something at the time who was the first choice, and he kind of lucked out. And I think most actors, if they're being real with themselves, know we just got lucky. We just got lucky that we booked that particular role.
Right.
That's very true.
Yeah, we weren't entitled to it. We didn't deserve it. We just kind of lucked into it. And so much of it also in voiceover has nothing to do with us. Nothing. It's the great writing.
It's the character itself, right?
Not just that, Harrison Ford totally deserves to own Indiana Jones and Han Solo. It's him.
What? I forgot. This dude is like, and then this Blade Runner character. Blade Runner is pretty like, famous too now. So like Harrison Ford is up there too. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. And like that's his personality, that's his sarcasm, that's his face, that's his
true. Yeah.
He brought as much to that role in partnership with the filmmakers. As a voice talent, you are not doing that for the most part. You are not part of the initial design. You are not part of the initial conversations of the plot. You're not writing the plot for the most part. Or sorry, the lines for the most part. You may improv here or there, but it's already been created before you step into that role.
Right.
And you bring some elements and dimension to it, which is what makes it a really fun character. But you are not giving nearly as much for the most part, unless you also are a creator on that show, like Family Guy. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot his name. I haven't watched Family Guy in so long.
But if you're a creator and a voice talent, then you've
Seth MacFarlane.
Yes, him.
Yeah.
That great guy.
I was like, oh my God, this dude is like incredibly famous. What's his name?
Yeah, exactly.
But so in a sense though, right now, from the Disney parks perspective, you have a couple of characters that can you really like you can say are yours, right? So yeah, we're still talking about your works, and I'm sure a lot of our audience members want to hear about some of more geek stuff. Let's continue on the geekdom, the fandom, and you've done additional voices for Batman Arkham Knight, and I'm not sure if you're caught up right now on all the DC news that's been dropping, but like they're not most likely. They are dropping a new Batman game. They're announcing it tomorrow. So you've done some additional voices for the Arkham Knight game, right?
Yeah, a long time ago.
So like
some extra characters for it. I really was the main part of the game though.
Got it.
Yeah.
I know. So here's the thing. I'm more of a DC guy. So I watch all the Marvel movies, but when it comes to like Marvel, like animation or Marvel, what's it called? Video games. Like I'm just like, you can keep that. I want no part in that. But with Marvel heroes, It's a well-known game. I'm not gonna lie. Like, people know about it, and you voice Elektra. So how is that, right? Like, how is that experience? Because she is iconic. Like, when you think of Daredevil, you think of Elektra.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Elektra for all their games, not just Marvel Heroes.
Got it. Oh wow.
Game for it. She's awesome. She's obviously not one of the huge Marvel characters, in terms of like what's going on right now with all the Marvel movies and the MCU. But she's so great because she's not a good guy. She's an assassin, so she's fun. She's a killer.
That could she be considered a villain then?
She's an anti-hero.
Yeah, anti-hero. Yeah. That would probably be the more accurate thing.
Because I was gonna say that could be your villain name that we still need to choose.
Yeah, she's definitely. She could go either way at any moment, and that's what makes her so fun. But she's choosing to be on the light side. She's choosing to fight. But that's why she's so interesting. Is she shows up when she wants to show up. She picks the battles she wants to fight.
Yeah.
And she's definitely unique. I'd say she's definitely unique as a hero, as a Marvel hero, because she's always walking that line between she could turn at any moment.
Do you play the actual games or you don't?
I have, but with assistance, because I'm not a gamer, so I need help figuring out what the heck to do with everything. But I played them, and I think they're really cool. I mean, I think they're obviously a lot of fun.
You're like, can you just like help me play this so I can hear my voice and how I sound in the game, please? Right? It's like, can we just move the story? All right, here's the thing. I'll give you the controller. You'll play it. I'll just listen. Fine, perfect. Okay, good. So, but what we were talking about often, right, is you play so like your catalog, your resume is just insane. So what do you think? I don't want to say what characters define you, because I don't want to use that term, because you've played so many characters. What are the ones where you have really felt sort of a really rooted connection with? One that, or not one or multiple, or just ones that you really, you're like, yes, this is it.
Well, this is a great question. And if I was being truthful, since I've been doing this for a while, since, I mean, if I'm doing the math, it's been at least 20 years, probably closer to 23, 24 years, really. Although the first few years I was just stumbling through it, figuring stuff out, and I wasn't really doing it full time. But so there's been a lot of characters along the way. I mean, that's a long time, 23 years. So there's been characters that I've really connected for a minute on a video game, and then, you're not lucky enough to still be doing that character anymore because that game is done. Right. So there's been a lot of them. But I would say the first really iconic one that felt like what an honor, I can't believe I'm having this role, was Princess Leia, for some early LucasArts titles. And
going back to Hamill, right? It always ties back into Mark Hamill.
In a way, yeah. So that was a real honor to voice match Carrie Fisher, and to do. It was Carrie Fisher, supposed to be around the time of A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. So younger version of the feisty Princess Leia. Right. And so that was amazing. And then Jessie the Cowgirl has been a huge honor and a huge part of my life for a long time. Been very lucky to be doing that character since, I think, 1999 was the first time that I stepped into her boots, voice doubling for the amazing Joan Cusack. And always a huge honor to be voicing her whenever that comes up. Mostly for those who don't know, I voice double her for a lot of video games, for a lot of Disney shows, for a lot of attractions at the parks, toys, and occasionally dropping in for a movie just to fill in for a line that maybe just needed finishing out. Although I'm pretty sure she always ends up doing the final, as well she should. It's her character. But a huge honor to voice her and sing for her. And feel like, I mean, obviously, as we now know, Dee Dee was like a double-edged sword of coolness and amazing opportunity to learn and to grow.
Right.
And there's been so many video games along the way where I learned something or took something away from each character, and Bloody Mary was one of them. Probably that was the first time where I felt like I was really bringing my sense of humor, my sensibility, where I was allowed to go as deep and as dark and as edgy as I wanted, and they allowed that exploration. Trying to think of what else. Obviously, getting to voice the bride in Constance Hatchaway for The Mansion will always be an iconic watershed moment, because how often do you get to be the voice in a classic attraction?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
not very often, I'll tell you.
Not very.
Not very often, and certainly one that I grew up with. That's the surreal part. There are going to be new attractions, and people taking on new roles, but to actually be in the classic mansion next to famous voices, Thurl Ravenscroft, Paul Frees, Leota Toombs. I mean, these are Eleanor Audley. These are iconic Disney voices, and to actually be in the next room.
Wow. Yeah.
It's just mind blowing to me. And I can't even put into words most of the time what that feels like. And then being a part of Tower of Terror, and being a little girl lost in that, another great Disney attraction. Cheers. So, and then there's newer games that, like, there's a game, I think it's called a horror maze. I don't really know.
Maze?
Yeah, it's like a video game term. It's a horror maze.
Okay.
Trying to get out of the maze, but there's a famous game now called Dark Deception, which has a ton of fans, and I'm the voice of one of the lead villains in that, Agatha.
Oh, villain, you say?
Yeah, she's definitely the scary, scary one. And I don't know what it is about my voice that I've been lucky enough to land so many like homicidal axes and knives and guns, but I've quite a few of them. That's yeah. On the one hand, you've got Bloody Mary and Agatha and Electra and the bride with a hatchet, and then you've got Dee Dee and Jessie the cowgirl.
Right, so opposite ends of the spectrum there. Yeah, absolutely.
Complete opposites.
I don't know what that's about, but
I don't know if anyone else thinks this, but I feel like she'll be a good Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn? Ooh.
Yeah.
Kat, you think you could pull it off?
There's so many amazing voice actresses who have filled those shoes so amazingly that I don't think I could pull off to their extent the incredibleness. I'd bring a different dimension, I'm sure, to it. Probably a subtler. I think if I were lucky enough to get a chance at it, I'd probably do a much subtler, eviler, darker version of her. Edgier.
Like, using the psychopaths you've already done, incorporate that into Harley Quinn, right?
Well, I think in general, there's so many voice actors who have the gift for going very, their energy is so amazing. Like a Robin Williams, amazing, versatile, kinetic energy. And I'm much more a quiet,
right.
I veer more the real quiet, intense side of things in general. Than the girl who did Dee Dee. But yeah.
No, we know. I will never, ever, I'll be like, oh, Dee Dee? No, I don't know who voiced her. I'm so sorry. I have no idea who it was, because I know you take I know you take pride in it, but yeah, it seems.
No, it was a lucky, amazing opportunity and such a gift to inhabit that role. Absolutely. But for all the reasons you guys have heard, I didn't necessarily first.
Right.
I grew into that role and was lucky to be a part of that.
I mean, kind of what I want to touch base on right now is, you've been saying you're doing this for what, 20 plus years, right? And you've done
24 years, yeah.
And you've done so many roles, but you once hit a bump, right, in your life, and that's something if you would give us the honor of telling that story, because it was really watching the TED Talk about it, I think to me was very compelling, very moving, very very grounded, because sometimes we truly do forget the phones, that computer job, it's all this compared to what's going on inside mentally and your overall just health as a human being. You got to, like we talked about earlier, you got to live. So
I love you guys. Thank you. That's really lovely of you to even broach that, and courageous, given that this is a pop culture.
No, like I said, we we talk about everything. That's why we didn't want to isolate it just specifically to this or that. It's just
a journey through the dark side. So let's
go.
So I will say up front, anybody who's really curious about the details of this, there was an amazing article that the Daily News did last year. It's only been a year. Last summer it came out.
Wow, yeah.
And it was the first time that my story broke wide. And then there was a number of other media outlets. SF Gate, which is the online version of San Francisco Chronicle, did a great article. Mm-hmm. But if you Google Kat Cressida cancer story or Kat Cressida, behind the scenes.
It's actually, I think, typing your name in on YouTube is probably the first or second thing that pops up. So, yeah, definitely, we could just send people that way. Yeah. But it's 9 minutes long, so it was it's a very good watch.
That's the TED Talk. I'm talking about like the articles.
Oh, the articles. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
But I also have a website, Kat Cressida Speaks, which is different from my voiceover website. So just Kat Cressida Speaks, which has
great
story there too. But the nutshell of it was in 2000, as I joked, in 2012 was going down the rabbit hole of working with the celebrity hip hop dancers and doing voiceover and starting to do fan conventions. And I got a diagnosis for something that I knew that there was something wrong. I felt something behind my jaw that was scary. But most of the doctors were what I call pooing it, marginalizing it, saying, oh, it's just a cyst. It's just benign. I don't really feel anything. You're a voice actress. You're probably just very sensitive. And for some reason, I had the weird, stupidity to keep pushing. Because most people wouldn't do that. Most people would probably say, good, I don't want to know that there's something scary. If the doctors feel that there's nothing wrong.
Oh, that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
As my Jewish grandmother would have said, "Gate goes into hay." Leave it alone. But I was driven, I guess, to find out at least what it was, and I ended up going for an MRI, and it was that really scary moment that you've seen in movies, or on a Hallmark Hall of Fame movie, or read in a novel, where I was just checking out, and I literally was on the phone with one of the dancers talking about I think we were going to San Diego Comic-Con because he was going to be signing autographs there or something. I don't know, something like that. And literally I get stopped as I'm going out the doors in Santa Monica into the bright sunshine. I get stopped by a clerk who says, actually, the doctor on call would like to see you. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't even know there were doctors on call. And I thought you just take your MRI and they give you the results later. Right. And, I knew there was something there, but I didn't really think it was going to be something devastating. I figured there was something they would have to go in and remove, something annoying.
Right.
And the doctor pulls me into a back room, and it literally from a movie. He sits me down. The room is kind of dark. He's got that X-ray display behind him, and it's got my MRI up there. And he says, you see that dark spot right there? I'm a little concerned about that. I mean, it's like from every movie you've seen, your worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Because, of course, what's the first thing you think?
Cancer. Or, something like that.
There's a dark mass, and it's got him concerned. So I immediately get very nervous and very quiet, and I'm like, what do you think it is? And he basically says, well, I can't speak to that. They're not legally allowed to start throwing out theories. Right. And what I saw was a very crazy dark mass where there shouldn't have been a dark mass. And it literally was underneath my brain and behind my jaw. And it's just a big dark mass. And far bigger than what I thought. I thought it was something like the size of a pea, maybe,
Mhm.
and it was much bigger than that. And he says, I'd like you to, I'd like your doctor to take a look at this, and I'd like, and basically what happens next is a series of conversations with this doctor that he doesn't really think we got to run tests. Now they've got to do a biopsy to figure out what it is, what that mass is. And this guy's a jokester. He's a famous ear, nose, and throat doctor in Santa Monica. And he's joking. And he says, if I were a betting man, I'd put all my money in Vegas that this is nothing. We're making out of it. And even worse, he goes to send me to get a biopsy where they wanted, basically the first way to do a biopsy is they go inside with a needle. They couldn't even get a needle into it because it was so hard and
like dense.
thick.
Yeah.
Wow. What did it feel like? Because you said like it was like, you knew something was there. So like, what was it?
It felt like
just like, okay.
Like when you press up against your jawbone.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like, but in a place where your other side.
Okay. Gotcha.
And when I was doing voiceover, I could feel something catching. Something was catching back there that shouldn't be catching. Like my jaw was catching for a moment on something that was just, annoying me, voice talent. And anyway, we go through this for about 2 or 3 weeks. They can't get a proper biopsy. And I finally say to him, go in there and carve it out. Go carve a piece of it out so they can properly biopsy, cut it out from the outside. And he says, literally, I don't want to do that, sweetheart. I don't want to ruin your pretty little face for nothing.
For nothing.
That's my journey. That's partly why I do the keynote speaking and why I speak about this, because this is for the Me Too movement. But here I am,
absolutely, Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Biopsy.
Yeah.
And literally, the next thing that happened is this is July 4th, 2012, July 4th weekend. I go away, go up to Santa Barbara. They're running the tests. Literally that Tuesday after the July 4th weekend, I get a call from the doctor's office. Literally 3:00 in the afternoon. The doctor would like to see you today. It's like 3:00 in the afternoon.
Right.
And I immediately, I'm scared, and I say, is it bad? Is it bad? What are the tests? He said, ma'am, I don't know anything about that. I'm just supposed to call you to ask you to come in to see the doctor today. Well, I know it's got to be bad because they don't say, come in same day.
Yeah.
Right.
Someone goes there with me, a friend, and basically they're in the waiting room. And I go into the room, and I call this the white out. Basically, he says to me in a long stream of words that what I have is incredibly unusual. It's most likely fatal. They need to operate immediately. I'll probably never speak again. This is all getting thrown at me.
Wow. Holy shit.
Yeah. And it's literally, I whited out. Like,
yeah.
I couldn't even tell you anything other than the fact that I heard the words and I saw white. And the next thing I knew, it was probably a minute later, I'm on the floor. I'm hysterical. They've called in my friend who's propping me up and holding me, a guy. And I'm hysterical.
Yeah.
And this is the same guy who'd been marginalizing it, a week and a half before, not wanting to put a scar on my pretty little face. And I was right. And it turns out that what it was this very rare sarcoma. I'll say it out loud, dermatofibrosarcoma protuberans, very rare. It usually never happens anywhere from the neck up. But I'll just say this for anybody who doesn't know this. Any complication from the neck up becomes 1,000,000 times scarier because every part of this is a moving part.
Yeah.
And there's 1,000,000 of them that are so
important.
Important and microscopic in what they and where they are and what they do, and everything's overlapped here, and mine was way back and underneath the brain. And what they didn't know, what they couldn't see because the mass was so large but also behind my jaw, they couldn't get a good shot, was if it had already bisected attached itself to my facial nerve. And that was what made it so terrifying, was that it most likely was because of where it was.
Mm-hmm.
It already was at my jaw. If it already was touching my facial nerve, it would be almost impossible to remove the cancer and keep my facial nerve intact. And for anybody who doesn't know about the facial nerve, it's this crazy mesh of nerves that even if you nick it in the slightest, it's done. And it never appears. It's unlike most things in
the nervous system is tricky. Yeah, definitely.
And if you nick the facial nerve, you will never speak again. Stroke victims. If you've seen a stroke victim, their faces.
Yes, I actually have. It's
sad.
It was really
And for me, being a young, vivacious voice talent, to be told that even if they could save my life, I'd probably never speak again because they'd have to.
Mm-hmm.
So I was obviously hysterical, and then unfortunately I had to learn a lot of hard lessons very early on, which this is why I do the keynote speaking. One was, don't trust a doctor you don't trust. So this guy told me, he already hadn't been awesome with me, right? You already know that he had marginalized me, but now he's telling me that I have to go find my specialist, but he'll be a part of the surgery.
What?
So he was attaching himself to this because he knew it would be an historic surgery, an unusual surgery.
Yeah, but he was like, not going to help you. Yeah.
And then I went on this series of down the rabbit hole, crazy wonderland experiences of meeting with specialists.
Mm-hmm.
But because this was so rare and had never been diagnosed in America in someone this young and a female and above the neck, like literally it had never been found above the neck. The reason why is that this particular sarcoma, it's like a candy-coated gumball, those kind that you put in.
Put the quarter in,
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. The candy coating made it look benign. And for most people who would get an MRI, it just looks like this benign mass, and that's why it gets written off. But what happens is eventually the candy coating shell dissolves as you get older, 65, turn 60, 65, it dissolves, and it immediately goes viral into the blood and into the brain. So most people who have had what I've had die very quickly because it hasn't been diagnosed early enough. I was the weird one who got diagnosed early enough. And it was some lab in Germany that identified it. America couldn't even identify it because it hadn't been on the books.
What on earth? What are to me, it's more like, what are I don't want to use the term, what are the odds, but it's just like, especially you as a voice actor, like for that to happen in that particular place, it's just like, what? It's crazy.
Yeah. So, that basically was the beginning of that journey. And the nutshell, which again, you guys can read about, was that I had to go through an unprecedented long surgery, 10 to 11 hours. Most open heart surgeries are about 4 hours, just to give you an idea.
Yeah.
And most people over the age of 40 don't really survive intact being under that long. You have a 50-50. You may go into a coma and never come out. So it's very risky on a lot of ways. And this amazing surgeon, Dr. Alessi, was the one specialist finally after several. Some told me I was inoperable, that it was already fatal.
Wow.
Some told me that they didn't want to touch it because they were afraid they would sever my facial nerve. Some gave me, okay, I can go in and do it, but I'm going to butcher you. And one I refer to as Dr. Frankenstein. He was like, I'll take an artery from here, and we'll take an artery from here.
Oh,
put it
wow.
here. Terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to butcher me to fix it. And Dr. Alessi was the only one who said, I think that I can get in there clean. I think I can get in there and get out and keep you intact. And he was the only one because he's both a brain surgeon and an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. So he felt confident that he could. He just was very optimistic and probably a bit nuts.
Yeah. I mean, but sometimes
that's what you need.
Yeah, exactly. You need a little bit of that,
And we had two other full-time celebrity plastic surgeons on hold that day in Cedars-Sinai.
Mm-hmm.
Basically waiting in the wings in case things got really bad and they needed to come in and help. My understanding is he managed to do it all. 10 hours on his feet. Can you do anything 10 hours on your feet?
No.
Let alone
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's a superhero, and
Shout out to him.
Yeah, these are like real life superheroes, right?
Absolutely.
and he's told me in retrospect that he can't believe how courageous I was, because most people in my position never would have done the surgery. Would have said no way.
And again, like you said, a lot of people would have just stopped at the first time the doctor said, "Oh, nothing's wrong with you. You're fine. Don't worry about it." Like whatever. Like, and this could have then become actually fatal. And like, I mean, it was fatal, obviously, but it wasn't like totally. You weren't. It's like set and done. Obviously, thank God. But you know, it's just very important. I think what you're doing, you know, this whole message that you want to get out. I think it's so important that people know this and people understand it, because you know, speaking personally from my own experience, like my dad has leukemia, so he it's, you know, he's in remission now, which is great. So it's so important, you know, like it's like we caught it, you know, he caught it somewhat early, so it wasn't like fatal. So it's so important to like go to your doctor, and also make sure you trust your doctor and what they tell you. And if you don't, if you don't agree with it, just go with your gut. And like, because you better to play it safe. Absolutely. So
Yeah,
so important.
Yeah.
sure.
I'm really glad that you shared that, Mark, and then I'm glad to hear that your father's in remission. And I appreciate you guys saying that my story is sort of a cautionary tale on trusting your doctor or trusting your gut. And the reason that I do the keynote speaking and why I do patient advocacy is that nothing my story shows that if you believe that there's something going on, whatever that is, if something's suspicious to you, it doesn't matter what the expert in the white coat with the 5 degrees behind him says to you. You deserve to be in the best health.
Yeah.
You deserve to have a full life. You deserve to be healthy. And even in Los Angeles, which should have the high standards of, you know, great physicians, the best of the best, along with New York City and Chicago, that, you know, those are the trifecta of cities that are supposed to have the top physicians and doctors in the world, in theory. I ended up in a situation with several doctors who were either too afraid to operate on me because they didn't want to blemish their record, not experienced enough to fix me, or misdiagnosed me. And I encourage everybody, if you've got a parent who's being told that it's no big deal, or if you're being told that there's something that you shouldn't worry about, if you're concerned, you have a right to find out. And I guarantee the answer is out there, although it may not be immediate. And the other thing I would just beg you, most of you guys are young, right? Most of your demographic is like probably under 50.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say. They're on
18 to
Instagram.
20, 18 to 24 to be specific.
You pups. Young pups. Right now, it feels like you're immortal. Right now, for most of you, even if you've had a sick relative, you yourself feel like it's never going to happen to you. Trust me. Yeah. I mean, I was one. I had a mom who had breast cancer and a grandma who passed away from a form of cancer. But I still thought that I was not going to be that one who ended up with it, because I was young and healthy and, you know, some version of attractive, and I thought it was never going to happen to me. And I would just encourage you, care.
Yeah.
Go get those tests early. There's a lot of tests early on now. They're encouraging. I know it's scary, but it's so much less scary to catch it early than to be facing a doctor who says to you, I wish you'd caught this 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm begging you guys.
And we're really glad that, you know, you're able to, you know, and to just promote this message, because I feel like you're absolutely right. You know, I live day to day, and I'm like, I feel good, you know, like at least in my head, you know, I'm like, I know I'm healthy, but it's just like in an instant that can all change. And especially something as severe as cancer, it's like, it doesn't matter the age group, doesn't matter, you know, your the color of your skin, nothing. It will get you.
And let me just say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overlap. We've got a little bit of an overlap.
Go
I
right
was
ahead.
perfectly healthy.
Right.
Like in theory, I was jogging and running, working out 3 times a day. I was buff. I mean, I looked good. I was LA sick.
Like,
I worked out. It was just this weird thing.
mm-hmm.
And again, most of the doctors were saying, don't worry about it. But I blew it off for several years. It was there. They think it was there for at least 15 years.
Wow.
And if I'd caught it way earlier, I know you guys are going to look up the story and you're going to read it. But the nutshell was I lost half my face. This was all removed. I looked like, what's his name? Two-Face. I was scary.
Mm-hmm.
I was completely deformed. I lost half my face. I lost my voice. This was all rebuilt. They did a good job.
Wow.
I'm very
absolutely.
If I'm being 100% transparent, I would have never guessed. Never guessed.
Several surgeries later, and very lucky and very blessed.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
But that is the truth. And if I had gone to the doctor earlier when I first felt it, I probably wouldn't have gone through such a severe, awful backside of it.
Right.
Because the earlier on you catch something, the easier it is for the body to heal. The less it is for them to deal with. I could kick myself that when I was 26 and I first felt something. For those not doing the math, that's about 25 years ago. When I was that young, I felt something, but I didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And had I dealt with it, then I probably all would have been was a much simpler surgery and not nearly the pain and suffering over 8 years that I went through, and losing my career.
Right.
Because I lost my career for a while, I had to basically rebuild from scratch. So.
And that right, I was going to point that out. That's what I think inspires me the most, is because a lot of people aren't able to. They may recover from a physical standpoint, but from an emotional and just someone's headspace after that, I couldn't even imagine. A lot of people are just like, I'm just gonna lay low. I'm just gonna try and find something else. But you were able to overcome that and give yourself I don't want to use the term second chance, but just you said it when in that TED talk. It's like life it's a fragile thing. So you had that experience and you realized that life is so fragile. So you were like, I'm gonna make the most of it each and every day. And that to me is the most I think the most important message, because we could go at any moment. We have no idea when that moment's gonna come. So we have to,
but it becomes a cliche for us. We say it a lot, but we don't
live by it. We don't live by it. It's 100% true. And I've been trying my best. Like, obviously when when people say, oh, you got to live like it's your last day, obviously I'm not going to go like bungee jumping in the middle of a work day. Right. That's not what people mean, but it's just like, at the end of the day, you have to just count your blessings. It's like, okay, you know what? I woke up to see another day. I woke up to a plate of food. It's the little things. It really is just the little things that matter. So
you guys are awesome. And we're maybe going to do a Halloween show.
You were fantastic. So we're going to establish your villain name as the Black Widow Bride from the Haunted Mansion, because, and this is why, because of your dedication and your passion to Disney. You're absolutely right. We don't know, excuse my French, jack about Disney, like, and especially and we
I didn't say that.
No, I'm saying
yeah.
I'm saying it. I'm saying because you said when it comes to history of Disney, not in terms of like in 14, whatever, but in terms of just being so passionate about what Disney has created as a whole, that was inspiring in and of itself. So that's why I wanna label you as our villain, the Black Widow Bride.
Okay. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I
AKA
mean,
Bloody Mary, AKA Electra, AKA the Black Cat.
All of it. But you are absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for sharing your story, because not a lot of people would be able to relive that in a sense by telling it over. So we really do appreciate it. And whatever you want to plug in terms of where people can see your story, where you are on social media so people can follow you. You can mention it here, and obviously we'll be, promoting it throughout the week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, if you're into Disney history, I will say my Twitter feed is pretty magical because I keep a very clean feed. It's all about pop culture, Marvel, DC, video games. And in the early morning, I always drop some mega bomb of Disney history or Disney trivia, which you guys now secretly know the answer to tomorrow. So this podcast will air 2 weeks after that.
I don't know what you're referring to, but sure. I'm going to guess it right.
Well, it already will be out by a week and a half, but I always do cool videos, and I always invite people to interact, and I engage. I always respond back to people. If you say something really cool, it gets a retweet.
Nice.
If you have something intelligent and cool to say. If you're into Marvel or you're into DC, I'm always dropping cool articles. I just did a really cool thing on the backstory of Thor and why he's like got the coolest character arc of any superhero who lost his powers and had to regain them.
Yeah.
I did one on what's your favorite most flawed superhero, and that crossed over into DC.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I love that. I love that stuff.
Can I ask you one question? Because going back to where you're like, oh, what are your viewers like more lean towards? I would say if there's one part, like obviously we branch out and people listen and it's great, like sports, movies, whatever. But one thing I think really a lot of people and just everyone in general right now has been speaking about is the Snyder Cut. Like, do you know about the Snyder Cut? Are you familiar? What is your whole take on that?
My take on it? I'm a big fan of what the original was supposed to be, and I think it's really cool that somehow Warner Brothers has allowed for that, because they could have not done that. They could have been prideful and said, no, what we released is the cut, and
Right.
I think it's really a testament. It's smart. It's a smart marketing ploy, but it's also a testament to their own understanding of the fan base, and that there can be a few different versions, and it's fun to get into a debate about which is better. I thought what Cavill, is it Cavill or Cavill? Which is the right pronunciation? Cavill.
Yeah.
I thought what he brought to the role was tremendous, and I mean, I grew up with Christopher Reeve. That was, and what an amazing man, and what an incredible story, obviously. And he was a very gifted actor outside of Superman, and he's iconic in that role. But I also really love what Cavill brought to it. And let's put aside the fact that he's gorgeous to look at.
Oh, he's handsome.
He's a handsome man.
And yet he inhabits the role as if he's not. Yeah. There's not a bit of him.
He just looks like an innocent Kansas boy.
There's so much soulfulness, and he's so committed to the myth of Superman and the conflict of being an alien and the loneliness and the isolation, as well as the, do I rise up to my best self, or do I say screw them because they're not,
Wow, you understand. So you're a fan of Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman then?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big fan of all of the great DC heroes and villains and Marvel villains and heroes. I loved Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. Was that the?
That was
that Dark Knight trilogy.
Yeah, Dark
Knight, the first one. I wasn't so much into the other two, but that was just me. I'm a girly girl, and I really loved the origin story, and I love Christian Bale. I think, wow. Of course, when he got cast, everybody in the world was up there. Everybody's always up in arms, about every casting. But
everything ever. Everybody's upset about everything now.
I think the only one who went unscathed was Tom Holland. I think everybody was very joyous about him being cast as Spider-Man overall. But
a lot of Andrew Garfield stands were like, no, like bring Andrew back, like the one that did previous the Amazing Spider-Man movie.
He's my favorite because he's such a deep actor, right. And because he brought a soulfulness to it, and he was mature in it. So I loved him. But if you're gonna go with a Peter Parker who's fresh and young, what a great choice.
Awesome.
But where was I going with this? So when Christian Bale was cast, I heard everybody in the world saying he's too small, he's a shrimp, he's he's not muscular. But man, I mean, he killed it.
Yeah, he did.
So
Kat,
good.
we're gonna make sure all the Snyder fans, all the DC fans, hear this portion, because I know they'll love
Put
that.
it up front, make it the tease, right?
Right?
Yeah, we're gonna accept that for sure.
But
what are your thoughts on Robert Pattinson being the next Batman?
I've
Not
learned
the next, shall I say, but
I've learned from history that we don't know.
Exactly.
I mean, what I do know is that he was an actor before he was. What the hell's the name of his character in Twilight?
Oh, Edward.
Thank you.
Edward.
Doesn't matter.
Edward
something. Yeah.
Edward Cullen. There you go.
I knew that he was a talented actor before that. He was a young actor, and he'd done some Shakespeare.
Yes,
you're doing Shakespeare.
he's
you're doing
very,
something right. So there's more to him than what we've seen, and I'm going to be the first one to say, who knows? Well, give him a shot. Give him a chance to prove it. Ben Affleck. I was definitely one of the people going, I don't see it.
Same.
But I think he did a solid job, and I think that he really proved another side to Batman. And
that's awesome.
I'm
glad.
I think everybody deserves a shot, and we'll see what he does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kat, thank you so much again. We are excited to continue to hear your voice, even if we never see you on camera. We will keep following your work. You are now forever a friend of the Chillin' With Villains, and I hope hope the feeling's mutual.
Is that what you do?
That's fine. That's our exit. That's our exit. Peace.
We'll take it.
We'll take it.
Take care. Kat, where can we find you?
So on Twitter, it's just my name, Kat Cressida, Kat with a K. Cressida. You Google it, it will correct you if you get it wrong. Kat Cressida.
She pops up. She's the first one to pop up. Don't worry.
Well, same on Instagram, just at Kat Cressida. I do great stories every day. Today with Star Tours, we got into a big fight about that one earlier.
Nice.
And,
we did.
Yes, we did.
And then on Facebook, it's got a dot in the middle. So it's Kat.Cressida.
Got it.
Awesome.
All
Be
right.
sure to check her
Sweet.
out, y'all.
Check her out. Follow her.